Greetings one and all, I'm Red Angel, and welcome to my top 10 best games of 2015 you might have heard of. If you're wondering why this didn't come out months ago when everyone was releasing theirs, well, that's because my original list wasn't quite up to par with what I viewed as the best, and I thought it would be disingenuous of me to recommend them. I reworked the list, and this is what I came up with, giving my viewers an assortment of games I can safely recommend, titles that I personally love, all in their own unique ways. The games on this list may not nearly be as obscure as my worst of list, but many of the bigger titles have been largely forgotten by the community, heard in passing, or just ignored altogether. Undertale and Life is Strange won't be on this list because their fandoms can fill a small country of their own. Don't worry, obscure game enthusiasts, we still have some bizarre ones on this list that you may not have heard of. With all that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? Remember when I said I'd be talking about games that the gaming community largely forgot about or still hadn't heard of? Well, this is my first case of it. Cat Lateral Damage. Despite being an extremely successful Kickstarter and getting all sorts of coverage, it's like the gaming world has gone nearly silent about it after its release. Cat Lateral Damage is one of those games that you think will be one note, but it turns out that you end up having fun with it for hours on end. There's a variety of levels, unlockable cats, and modes of play that extends the game's shelf life. It's one of those titles that you can just run around in and have fun without putting too much thought into it. There is a little bit of strategy you can put into it, but if you just want to run around and be a cat, you can do that too. That's the fun of this game. There's also plenty of references to various other licensed products that may get a chuckle out of you every once in a while. Truthfully, I put Cat Lateral Damage on this list because I wanted people who just needed a game for some goofy fun to have something to go with. It's been a de-stressor of mine ever since I purchased it, and in this hustle and bustle world, I think we need a game like Cat Lateral Damage to relax and cause some havoc in a family-friendly sort of way. Tabletop games have been around for years, and it's only fitting that we'd get some games that represent this like Armello eventually. Armello is a beautifully drawn game about a kingdom that's in danger of collapsing after its monarch goes mad, and it's up to you to claim the throne. You're competing against 3 other players, whether they be AI or player characters, and you have to defeat them in order to win. There are 5 distinct clans: wolves, rats, bears, rabbits, and bandits, and each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Each character has their own backstory, which factors in why they want to become king in the first place. There are countless guides about this, so I won't go into too much detail here, but each hero has their own way of winning, and learning this is half the fun of the game. No 2 rounds of Armello are the same, and there is a wide variety of things you can do within the game in order to win. A lot of this is RNG, but you can put the odds in your favor by doing quests, fighting other players, and gaining prestige, which acts as a reputation for your feats. This means you can conquer your foes in a multitude of ways that they didn't see coming. There's also added elements involving what's infecting the monarch, the rot, forcing you to not only compete against other players, but against the king himself, who is also out to get you. What's interesting is that in general, the monarch's AI seems to be a lot smarter than the AI of the controlled characters, which is a grand challenge and also slightly frustrating. There were entire rounds where I was able to go around decimating all the characters, but then ended up losing because of something the monarch did. Something about Armello that I immediately noticed was that while the game does plenty of things to keep it fresh, Armello isn't a game you want to marathon for hours on end. That and the game shines a lot more in multiplayer than it does in single player, which is a shame since there could have been a lot more done in order to make it just as interesting as multiplayer. Armello is the sort of experience you need to share with others, and it's a game that can't be hidden away to rot in the background. With its expansion coming out soon, I'm looking forward to playing more of this Game of Thrones Redwall chess game that is Armello. Bold Boy is a unique beast, and I knew that the first moment I saw it on Kickstarter, which made me interview the developers and got me excited for the eventual release. It's a game that did everything it promised on its Kickstarter, offering a point-and-click horror game with unique art style, gross monsters, and some platforming twists. Bold Boy himself has an infectious laugh and an impish yet easily frightened persona that really makes you feel for him when he's fighting these horrors of his house. The atmosphere can be tense and spine-tingling at times thanks to the music and sound effects, leaving you shaking in your boots. Each area has its own unique way of solving puzzles that are shown in the bright dreamlight sequences at the start of every level. Bold Boy is rather easy overall, and it leaves much to be desired in the sense of actually being challenged. Death is only a mild inconvenience, which works because the game itself is a bit on the short side, and having to replay the longer platforming parts after dying would be a chore. Bold Boy was only around 2 hours, and the pacing was incredibly fast, so it goes by in a blink of an eye. It just ends suddenly after a rather tense boss fight, leaving you wondering what just happened. Nonetheless, Bold Boy is a creative gem that needs to be recognized, and while I know it's gotten a fair amount of exposure from other YouTube channels, I was there long before it had a playable demo, but I'm glad to see it's grown into the game that it is now. Reincarnation isn't a subject that's covered too often in games, at least not in the more traditional sense of the word, and that's part of what makes The Deer God such an interesting title. It takes a more spiritual route. You start off playing a hunter who shot a baby deer and are later killed by wolves. You're then brought back by the eponymous deer god who tasks you to live out your days as a deer from fawnhood on. It goes about this by making you nearly powerless and slowly gain more power as time goes on, mixing platforming with oddly styled Mega Man difficulty and power-ups. Now I know this sounds a little odd to the normal gamer, maybe even a little hipster and pretentious. Well, you're not necessarily wrong about those assumptions. The deer god does talk down to you sometimes, and it has a tone of condescension that I don't think the developer intended, but it is there in some of the text, especially with the moral choices you have to make. Nobody likes being told that they're a bad person, and the deer god punishes you for killing things like bunnies by turning you into a fish if you just so happen to die. I was deeply enthralled with it, however. I loved hopping around, being a deer, helping the animals in the forest, and trying to earn my redemption in the eyes of the deer god. It was a creative concept with beautiful artwork that captured my attention from start to finish. It's why I interviewed the developer back when it was on Kickstarter and why I did a preview when it was on early access. The Deer God was a Kickstarter game that I believed in, and since it's on my countdown, you can see that I wasn't displeased with the results. When it comes to unique and creative titles, Might and Delight tend to be one of the first studios that come to mind. And with that comes the Shelter series and its entry on the list, Shelter 2. In Shelter 2, you play as a mother lynx who, after giving birth to cubs, must hunt down various creatures in order to keep them alive, along with traveling from place to place as danger stalks you. The cubs can die at any time, so if you have strong maternal instincts like myself, you may have an incredibly hard time in this game watching your cubs die before your very eyes. It takes a semi-realistic approach, with you as the mother lynx having to take care of all of your babies, having to portion out their meals between each one, teaching them how to hunt with you, and avoid dangers like wolves on the terrain itself. The difference is it does veer more on the artistic side at times with how you navigate the symbols with your lynx vision and how the art style looks like it comes straight out of the pages of a storybook. It helps tell the story of this very beautiful yet very dangerous world you found yourself in. Now, there are quite a few gameplay issues that, while they are getting slowly fixed in patches, are extremely noticeable. Things like frame rate drops, odd little glitches that cause the cubs to spaz out and get lost when they're following you, and more, which really takes away from Shelter 2 as a whole. It can also get a little bit repetitive, but luckily no two playthroughs are the same, since you can have any of the surviving cubs be your next protagonist, and it changes the path you take. Slightly, but it does change. Personally, I'd recommend getting this game when it's on sale because despite the bugs I mentioned, it's still very much worth owning if you enjoy artistic titles. Shelter 2 may not be perfect, but it's worth it to see your precious cubs grow into big, strong adults going off to continue this cycle of nature. This is a curious game that tries to emphasize what it's like to live with a social anxiety disorder through a series of keyboard snapping puzzles in between two worlds, and it's a fascinating take on it. The player explores the world as Josh, the young man with the disorder, using his two alter egos. There's Caleb, who lives at the fringe of reality and wants to conquer his fears, and Emil, who doesn't want any social contact. Sim has a very abstract art style, using only black and white to show what's happening on screen. They convey this through two distinctive worlds that you have to navigate through, and small textless cutscenes allowing you to interpret what's going on. The game often throws up random phrases throughout the levels that people with anxiety will likely recognize. Things about self-worth, that everyone is laughing at them, things of that nature. Us navigating through these puzzles is a way for Josh, the main character, to navigate his way through his problems and figure out a better reality. Even if the way it goes about it is by throwing us into spinning blades of death for missing our jump slightly. The controls are tight, which means it leaves very little room for error to the point of frustration, as in the deaths in Sim aren't always your fault like they are in other platformers of its kind. Sim isn't quite as refined as something like, say, Super Meat Boy, but it's a well put together platforming puzzle title. Not only that, but there's a mode you can play where you have the ability to design your own levels and play in other players' levels all around the world, which increases the replay value exponentially. Sim tactfully handles the subject of social anxiety in a way that makes it easy to understand and fun to play. A game like that deserves to be on a list like this. When I came across Hand of Fate, I truly hadn't seen anything like it before. It's a deck builder based D&D-esque action RPG with roguelike elements to it. All these concepts have been used on their own countless times before, but the way the Hand of Fate goes about making them work together is what makes it truly special. You play as an adventurer who has stumbled across a mysterious card game that takes his memories, turns them into cards that both you and the dealer play with. But the dealer has his own unique cards exclusive to his deck that'll make your journey through the levels even harder. You can unlock special gear unique to your deck to combat this, but it's all up to chance. The player gets to create the deck they play with, which means the majority of encounters you come across are your own doing, unless they're locked into the deck by the dealer. The encounters change the gameplay from a card game to a third-person hack and slash where you have to survive against the hand you've been dealt. While there is an element of luck to it, since you'll often not know what's coming up next and the dealer tries some slick shuffling moves in order to trip you up, it gives Hand of Fate another element of danger to it, especially when you land on an encounter you weren't prepared for and have to switch to third-person hack-and-slash mode with little to no life left. It also helps that Hand of Fate does have some lore to it, which I won't spoil here, but it just adds another layer to it. I'd like to bring up that this game was made in Unity, as were many of the other entries on this list, and while it does have occasional stuttering issues, it doesn't detract from the experience overall. That's why I highly recommend you sit down with this mysterious dealer and test your skills against the Hand of Fate. A while back I had a friend of mine approach me about a game called Stasis, which involved body horror, human experimentation, what-if scenarios, and space. Needless to say, I was 100% on board with it from the start. It's a point-and-click adventure, but it's a little more on the basic side than other entries in this particular genre. Most of the puzzles can be solved by common sense, but that's not really what people came here for. They come for the story of John Marachek trying to find his wife and daughter, and in that regard, Stasis doesn't disappoint. John and you become witnesses to the horrors of the station, giving way to plenty of moments of shock, anguish, and disgust throughout your entire journey. This isn't an adventure for those with a fragile heart, or a weak stomach for that matter. There's some parts of this that are just stomach-churning to behold, but that's part of the beauty of it. Each moment you find a sickening slab of mutilated human flesh, you learn more about the story through their data logs, and it really helps build up this world that the developers had in mind. There's notably barely any music in it either, other than the distant sounds of machines whirring. This leaves a nice eerie feeling which makes the player uneasy. There's no moral choice system in here either. There's either a bad choice that gets you killed or a good choice that lets you live. You find out which one that is really quickly after you do it, so be prepared for those moments. Full transparency, I love this kind of stuff. I'm a huge fan of medical horror, body horror, and sci-fi, which meant this game was like my bread and butter for quite a while. I'd like to say that Stasis is flawless, but it isn't, since there are some turns that the story takes that are just eye-roll worthy, but otherwise, I was thoroughly engaged. Stasis is a game that truly capitalizes on the phrase, "In space, no one can hear you scream." Now I know what you're thinking. Grow Home is on this list? Grow Home is popular. Well, you're sort of right on that. It is popular, but not nearly as popular as it should be, and the fact that I can still mention this game to gamers and they have no clue what I'm talking about is rather telling. Compared to the likes of Undertale and Life is Strange, Grow Home doesn't have the same sort of fan base, and I must say that's disappointing because Grow Home is truly a treat. You play as Bud, a little robot that's on a quest to save his planet by growing strange plants to the stars. While there's a lot more to do in this game, like collecting strange flora and fauna, gathering various seeds, and exploring this huge planet you're dropped on, that's the main premise. You're given this big world that Bud has to make sense of in order to save his own world, with the help of Mother, an AI that's designed to help Bud throughout his journey. You're given pretty much free reign, but there's a sense of progression if you collect certain things, because the more you explore and gather, the more you're rewarded with things that make your life as a little robot a lot easier. This is the sort of game that you can explore for hours and still might not unlock everything, which gives Grow Home quite a bit of replay value, especially for those who want all those shiny achievements. There are a couple of issues with Bud's control. Since he seems rather top-heavy, he will sometimes collapse without warning, or sometimes you have to be too on point with his controls, but nothing too big to complain about. Bud is somehow the most expressive character I've seen in a while, and if this little guy pushes the Assassin's Creed boys out of the way and became Ubisoft's new mascot, I'd be completely fine with that. Actually, please do that, Bud. Maybe if you're around, we'll actually get a sequel to Beyond Good and Evil. Grow Home is a trip to the stars and back. Let's just hope the sequel can live up to the predecessor. Dropsy. For anyone who knows me, you knew this would be number one no matter what. Even with Bud and his never-ending charm, you knew Dropsy would win out in the end for just being so delightfully bizarre. Dropsy is a point-and-click adventure that is unlike any game I've seen in a long time. You play as Dropsy, a clown accused of murdering his mother and setting a circus tent on fire. Now he has to go around town and change the way that people feel about him so he can give them a hug. You heard that right, I'm not kidding. That's the entire premise. Just go around, hug people in your warm, damp, loving embrace, you weird clown you. To do that, you need to solve puzzles, which usually involve the things that people are angrily yelling at you about or clues hidden throughout the world. There's no dialogue in Dropsy, it's all told through the artwork itself and the speech bubble with pictograms in it. It honestly works well, almost too well in fact. I found myself getting far more moved emotionally by things that were happening in Dropsy than I did from any other title in 2015. All because of this game that looks like it has a silly little story about a clown but turns out to be more about love, friendship, suffering, and loss, and all sorts of things you wouldn't expect from a game where your main character looks like this. Dropsy is much like Bud, a painfully endearing character that you just want to see things go his way for once. The poor guy gets pushed around constantly, and yet despite that, he still wants to make friends with everyone. That's dedication right there. The art is delightfully exaggerated looking, the music is varied as well as catchy, and let's not forget the controls and everything functions without a hitch. There was obviously a lot of love and dedication put into Dropsy, and it shows. This is the only game this year, and the only game that I've played in a long time that I can, without a shadow of a doubt, call perfect. Not only is this my game of the year despite my distaste for that term, but this is a game I would say is flawless as a diamond. Dropsy has made an official fan out of me, and I couldn't be happier. There you have it, my top 10 best games of 2015 you might have heard of in all its glory. There were a lot of good games I could have put on this list, but these were the ones that stood out to me the most. Well, that and I could have filled this list with point-and-click adventure games only, but I wanted to give you a little bit more variety than that. There's a link to each game in the description if you want to check them out for yourself, and feel free to leave what's your favorite obscure or semi-obscure game from 2015 that didn't make the list. I'm Red Angel, and I'll see everyone next time.